Hello, everybody, and welcome to Action and Adventure, the Hasbro Universe podcast. And today, we have reached our 10th episode. That may not seem like much, but I am just shocked and amazed that we have made 10 episodes. Just like, wow. I cannot believe that we are still around at this point. And joining us on this very special occasion is a very special guest who will be filling in for Callum this week. Callum had something come up, and as such he cannot be here this week, but luckily we have a great fill-in guest. Please welcome from the TF Wiki, allspark.com, and of course his hit YouTube series, Transformers The Basics. Ladies, gentlemen, non-binary people everywhere, put your hands together for the one, the only, Chris McFeely. Chris, how you doing today?
Wow, that was... I feel like we should just stop the show now, because I can't live up to that introduction. That was... Well, it's a pleasure to be here, everybody. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about... By the way, I'm your host, Daniel. I don't know if I actually said that part. I usually say that part, so... So, yeah. But today we are going to be talking to you about IDW Comics and the Hasbro Universe. Unfortunately... there are two titles we're not going to be talking about because Chris hasn't read them, and I make it a policy on this show to not force anybody to read anything. So all those times that we've covered Mask, it's only because Callum chose to read Mask. So, you know, it's really his own fault.
Innocent whistling.
But yeah, so today we will be covering Transformers Lost Light number 9, First Strike number 3, and G.I. Joe First Strike. And I think this is going to be a good little discussion to have with Chris. But of course, first off, I want to talk to you, Chris. So, when we first started the show, me and Callum did like a little thing where we talked about sort of our first thoughts when this whole Hasbro Universe thing was announced. I'd like to get your thoughts. Like, now that we're like... a year into this, like, full universe? Yeah. What are sort of, like, what was your original thoughts when, you know, IDW announced, hey, Transformers is now going to share universe with G.I. Joe and ROM and all that?
Well, I can't deny I sucked my teeth. When Revolution was announced, when it said it was they were going all in, all at once, just boom, just making, I was not sure. It did smack rather of a Hasbro mandate at the time, given what we know about their plans for cinematic universes and everything else they've been doing. Now, obviously, it came out later that it was Barber and Rial, I think it was, that had come up with the idea independently and brought it to Hasbro. Though I do wonder if that might not have been a case of jumping before you're pushed. Right. But whatever, I feel like it definitely came out better as a consequence of that, whatever the impetus behind it was. And I did ultimately wind up enjoying Revolution quite a bit, yes. Everybody had a generally good reason to be there in the story. It went a little wobbly at the end as things just sort of started flying at each other. But I enjoyed the start of it, and... It softened me on the whole Hasbro Universe idea. I was like, Revolution, it wasn't perfect, but I did really enjoy it, and it did make me think maybe this can work, And I haven't followed every single book. I've not been reading ROM or Micronauts or Mask, but I've been reading Joe and Revolutionaries and the other things that have been coming out. And generally speaking, I've been enjoying what I've been reading. I didn't read Mask because I did read the Revolution one-shot, so I know I didn't want anything to do with that. And I've never cared about ROM and Micronauts. To be honest, I'm still mad that this hasn't allowed them to reprint the classic Marvel series, which is what I would be much more interested in reading. I don't understand why that hasn't happened yet. I have no attachment to the characters. They're oddly out of step with everything else that's going on in the universe in that regard. They are the two outsiders, and they're the two that are winding up thrown together now in this post First Strike landscape as well. Because they're not 80s properties; they are 70s properties, and they're not true. From the same. They're not from the same school of kidvertainment that brought us things like Joe and Transformers and Visionaries and Mask and in the 80s, and I feel like they do sit outside the maybe that's why I haven't been warmed up to check them out at all, because it feels to me like they do sort of sit outside the sphere of the real appeal of this universe, which is all the things that we used to have when we were kids banged together. And kids who grew up with Transformers and G.I. Joe didn't grow up with ROM and Micronauts. That was 5 to 10 years before that.
I will say on the subject of the reprints, as someone who's read all of ROM, like it is one of those things where there's so many appearances of like Marvel. Copyrighted things. It's not like that one issue of it's not like Transformers #3 from back in the 80s where we'll just black out the cover, Spider-Man on the cover, and just put in a summary. It's one of those things where they're like you'd be missing whole chunks of the story, honestly.
Well, I would have. I assumed that if they could ever do it, they would have to make some. They would have to arrange some kind of thing with Marvel. Whatever they did to allow them to start to do the reprints that had Circuit Breaker and Spider-Man in them. After the first round of reprints, I don't know if you remember, but whenever IDW reprinted all the Marvel stuff the first time around 10 years ago, they just didn't print all those issues. Those are just the gaps in the collections. They just didn't print issue 3 or any issue with Circuit Breaker in it, and that was crap. That was a terrible way of doing it.
Oh yeah.
They sorted it out after that, and I don't know. Maybe it's because there's so much more high-profile characters more regularly in ROM, but I feel like something could surely be worked out. But that was my big hope for the announcement of ROM and Micronauts, sadly, and it just hadn't happened. So, yeah. But I have been enjoying generally the stuff that I've been reading since. G.I. Joe hasn't been this fresh in years, and Revolutionaries is just crazy continuity fun, and the Transformers books themselves haven't been negatively impacted in any way, despite all these strange claims you hear people making about how they've dropped the books because of all this Hasbro Universe stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what books you're reading. But
they're not reading.
Oh, we're not reading, yeah. But on the whole, it does sort of feel like there's this contraction we're seeing coming up was a little bit inevitable. It doesn't seem like it's been embraced the way they were maybe hoping it would, or but at the same time, it does feel like it's been moving in phases, and that there was an eye to this possibility. The way that the books have been moving, based on my limited exposure to what's been going on in ROM and Micronauts and Mask, where G.I. Joe certainly seems like it has plans for a longer haul. But I guess we'll just have to see. But maybe that leads us into what the solicits are telling us.
Yeah, that's a great transition. So let's talk about IDW's December 2017 solicitations. So first up, we have the full solicit of the Till All Are One annual, the annual that will be finally wrapping up Till All Are One, and I kind of want to just push this off until but I know it's coming, but I know it's going to be the last thing that Marguerite is, as far as we know, is writing for the foreseeable future for Transformers. So it's I'm disappointed that the series is ending, but I'm glad that she at least got the chance to have this annual to wrap everything up.
Yeah, Till All Are One has been a great series, honestly. The Windblade books were always kind of hamstrung by either their length or their need to tie in with other things. But Till All Are One, regardless of the Titans Return tie-in or not, really did get the chance to spread its wings properly and show what the creative team could do when it didn't have stuff getting in its way. I think it's been really good. It's easily been able to stand alongside the other two. But three Transformers books always did seem a bit of an overreach, and if one was ever going to go, I think it always was Till All Are One. It's sort of not a quality thing, but sort of a last hired, first fired type situation.
Yeah.
And but as you say, I am really glad they're getting this annual to tie the story off.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but it's like one of those things where, because the series was Windblade Windblade 3 basically, it might have gotten. It might have, one of the things that might have contributed to those lower sales were, just all the dumb people that are like, ugh, girl Transformers. Ugh.
I don't know. I don't feel like Till All Are One was promoted that way, though. I never, as much as I like Windblade as a character, the idea of titling a series after her and making it out that she was the one character in the entire history of Transformers who was worthy and capable of headlining their own ongoing comic was always dumb. That was, that was so it's why it's so strange that they decided, as soon as they stopped it for Till All Are One, they decided to rename XRID Optimus Prime. But especially when it's not, really about Optimus, but I don't know. I don't feel like Till All Are One was promoted that way. I think, and if you picked up issue one, you could see it wasn't. It was a continuation of the threads, but there was a tangibly shifted focus.
Yeah.
It was too good for this world.
Yeah, it really was. So after that we have Transformers versus the Visionaries. Now, this gets us our first little hints towards the plot, which last time we had just kind of speculated on. Cybertron has been invaded. The Transformers encounter unwelcome guests at the heart of Cybertron, and they may not have their host's best interests at heart. Refugees from another world, the Visionaries' startling magical abilities could make them powerful allies or dangerous enemies. So I was pretty much right on point with this. I pretty much figured it was going to be the Visionaries come to Cybertron, and something about their magic gets the conflict going. Chris, I'm curious to know what sort of your what's your sort of thoughts, even including all the concept art and all that we've seen. What's sort of your thoughts on Transformers versus Visionaries?
I have very mixed thoughts on it, if I'm honest. The craft of the thing looks good, but stylistically it's so far removed from the originals that my brain doesn't really read it as the Visionaries. And I like Visionaries, the show. In fact, it was one of the best Sunbow Marvel production shows on a craft level again. But Visionaries was perhaps the most significant or high-profile failure of the Hasbro Sunbow advertainment kids shows in the 80s. One season, comic cancelled in the middle of a multi-part story, entire second year of toys designed and prototyped that didn't come out. So I have trouble believing that there's any real zhuzh behind Visionaries. And the fact that it is a little exhausting that it's another one where they're bringing them in riding the Transformers coattails as well. Mm-hmm. It's we know Transformers is the best, most long-lived, most proven aspect of the Hasbro universe, but is any of this stuff ever going to be? I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of like throwing it out there to die, but on the other hand, it's do you really feel you have to use Transformers to springboard literally all of this stuff to life?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know, how much of this goes into, what they were planning to do, especially because in my talks with John and, people like John Barber, Brandon Easton, and sort of, they've discussed this, the summit that they had and sort of planning out, this whole event and sort of how First Strike was part of that. And if my prediction turns out to be true, that the talisman turns out
it's got to be the talisman, yeah.
Yeah, it has some...
Especially given this mention of the heart of Cybertron in the solicit, given what the villains are up to in First Strike, it's got to be the talisman. Especially after all of Revolutionaries, and then the first time, and then it's not until the First Strike preview written by a different author that suddenly they're talking about the talisman being magic, when there's been no intimation that that's what it is at all until that point. The talisman's got to be tied in with all this.
But you, at the same time, you have to wonder, like, was that sort of a plan, like, from back in, like, when Revolutionaries, like from back when they had the summit, and sort of was like, all right, so we're going to do this. We'll have this talisman thing. I'll do, like, I've got this talisman thing. Oh, what if we connect this talisman thing to the Visionaries? Oh, that works, because I'll connect it to Onyx Prime, and, the animal motif will work and all that. It's really, I'm interested to know how far this plan goes back and all that.
Well, there was the Visionaries symbol in, what was it, Revolutionaries number... Three? So that's pretty early on,
Right. And to me, I think it works thematically to have... Like, I do understand people's frustrations, especially because it's human-like aliens, but still humanoid, fighting against Transformers and all that. And, of course, there's that cover with Ironhide. So I understand the apprehension, but I think thematically having... a bunch of wizards go up against literal robots, I think I think that's probably where this idea sprung from originally, right? Like,
oh yeah.
So I'm interested to see how it works.
Visionaries has the long-standing science, or rather magic versus technology theme that makes them a good. There's definitely a crossover in the concept, but how they, I think the thing is. There is definitely a crossover in the concept as we know it, but we don't know really what this concept is for the Visionaries.
Right.
And we just have to wait and see, really. And then that's another part of it, is like we just have to, we're going headlong into the crossover out of the gate to introduce them, and it's hard to be super hyped about it because I don't know what to expect from the depictions of the characters at all.
Right.
Yeah. Instead of maybe letting them stand on their own first, it's all about springing them off the back of the Transformers. I can't get super hyped for Transformers versus Visionaries when the Visionaries that are going to be in that are not going to be, from everything we've seen so far, are not recognizable as my Visionaries, if you know what I mean.
I get that.
Stylistically, or whatever their backstory is,
Yeah. I certainly think it's better that they're launching them after one of the events rather than what happened to Mask.
Oh yes, definitely, 100%.
Because like what happened with Mask, I think was definitely not like it made sense in the story to have them come after an initial conflict with Transformers and G.I. Joe, but I think in the long term it just really was like we already have all these other books that are around that are coming into this event, and then and then you're at another whole set of characters. I definitely think that did not work well for Mask, but yeah. No.
It probably didn't help. That their introduction and incorporation into the crossover in the main story was being written by somebody who wasn't actually, the writer on the Mask book.
Oh yeah, that even from the get-go there was continuity confusion with stuff like Blitzwing and all that. So yeah, it was definitely not. But anyways, moving on, we have Optimus Prime number 14, which appears to be a follow-up to Transformers Salvation, which I am excited for because I read Salvation mostly just for the podcast, honestly, because I actually hadn't read Redemption and Punishment before that. But I read Salvation. I really liked it, so I'm glad that we're sort of following up on the whole the new Cybertronian life from that Trypticon was protecting when last we saw. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to add to that one. I'm really looking forward to this one. I really enjoyed Salvation and Redemption. Punishment was okay, but Redemption and Salvation were both really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it.
Yeah, and I like how the blurb teases that apparently Trypticon has officially become a Dinobot now, which is
I figured that's sort of where they were going with it. You know, it wasn't, explicit at the end of Salvation, but I was like, oh, they're going to hang out in him now? Is this a whole thing? Is it dinosaurs all together?
Yeah, but it's just like cool. It's like the Dinobots introduce their newest member, Trypticon. So,
and they'll be missing a trick if they don't make one of the new protoforms Slash.
Oh, that would
not
be
that
cool.
I'm expecting Volcanicus to be in IDW because everything that's going on with Grimlock would rather seriously prohibit that. But they will be missing a trick if they don't bring Slash in.
I mean,
because it's right there.
To be fair, Strafe is there now, and we saw what they did with Skylinks Skyrain and Galvatronus, right?
Hmm.
So
well, yeah, but I mean, there's the new protoforms just popping up out of the ground. It's right there. There'll be no, you won't have to tweak or rewrite or force anything with that. It's just, yep, here's a new one. Yep, it's great. Go, yeah.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. We also get Transformers Lost Sight number 13, Cabin Fever, which will. So apparently the crew is still on in Skip, and apparently they're getting at each other's throats. This is going to be the follow-up to the Mutineers arc, which I'm really looking forward to. But I think the biggest announcement as far as this goes is the artist, because Alex Milne, who I have been loving, like as much as I've been loving him on ROM versus Transformers, it is going to be exciting to see him come back to Lost Light.
I think I'd be more excited if I didn't feel like I'd already read this issue 2 years ago. We'll see, but you've already done the bottle episode with a large number of Transformers crammed into a small spaceship. We've had that. You did that already. So, that's my takeaway from the solicit. You did that already. What else you got?
Yeah, true. Let's see. We also get ROM and the Micronauts number 1. Of course, this is the crossover that is that is sort of folding the Micronauts into ROM. But at the same, and I'll be honest, I've been apprehensive of this, because just because I'm such the ROM fanboy. It's like I was like, oh, but I don't want I don't feel like we need the Micronauts cutting into ROM's screen time.
Sure. As somebody who wasn't reading either book, I personally went, okay, I guess, whenever they announced it,
Yeah. I will say, though, the fact that it's been announced as a mini-series,
yeah, exactly, yeah. No, it's suddenly like, oh, okay, fine, yeah, 5 issues, yeah, sure, that's fine.
Yeah, it does give me a little pause. That is a good thing for me. I will say this, though, the blurb teases that Baron Karza will be teaming up with Dirge, the Dire Wraith. And I have to say, I'm getting really tired of Baron Karza.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, as somebody who's not reading the thing, it's like, have they no other baddies? I don't know Micronauts. Are there no other baddies besides Baron Karza?
I mean, I am also not a Micronauts expert like I am on ROM. I can tell you, though, that, definitely I would like to see either them take on just ROM's villains, because ROM has several villains now at this point. Dirge, Axiom, a few others, or just I don't know. I just feel like too much Karza, and this goes back to something that we were talking about with Wrath of Karza on the last episode, where we were like, I feel like there's just there's been too much Karza. Like he worked really good as a villain in Revolution, but I feel like then bringing him back so soon for Wrath of Karza was just it was too soon, especially with given a whole invasion. Now you're bringing him back again. It's like I would have rathered and especially because there's other villains like Shazrayla, and granted Shazrayla is in First Strike, and she is a super interesting character that
I'm enjoying her in First Strike.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just feel like I will say I'm getting tired of Karza, and I hope that after this series, if they do launch another Micronaut series, that it at least I don't know, retires.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they retired the Micronauts in general for a while after this, because honestly, based on what I understand, it seems kind of like the story that the long form story that was being told there is told now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, I feel like Cullen Bunn when he got the job had this whole thing planned out, and then we were gonna get it over a long period of time, and then they were like, all right, well, here, Wrath of Karza, you're gonna do your big, thing, and it's okay, and it did very much feel very rushed. I'll say, that first arc of Micronauts, I still think is just a great little story, but after that, the book really does. It really kind of gets screwed up, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes. After that, we have Scarlet Strike Force. Now, this is a book that you will actually be reading, Chris. So
yes, I will check this out.
Yeah, this was given a full announcement. This originally, of course, was announced as G.I. Joe Unmasked. I have to say, I kind of like the new title more.
I think it's strange to me that they've taken the word G.I. Joe out of the title. True. Because it's not as if G.I. Joe. It's not like it's a real headline grabber anyway. Because obviously the bloom is well off the Joe Rose at this point.
Yeah.
But Scarlet, it's strange, maybe it won't harm. Sitterson's Joe has obviously been very much against the sensibilities of a lot of long-term mainstream middle-aged white G.I. Joe fans for a long time anyway. So if they're not buying it already, maybe I don't know. It's an odd one to me. It's an odd one, but it's probably a better title because let's be honest. It feels kind of like whatever presence Mask is going to have in this seems a little bit editorially mandated.
And really, even then, they were saying it was only going to be Matt Tracker that was going to join up with the team. The rest is off. So
I am into what Sitterson is doing with G.I. Joe. It's not surprising to me that mainstream G.I. Joe fandom isn't, because it's the old chestnut of the mainstream adult G.I. Joe fandom is all about the Hama comics, not the cartoon. And Sitterson is primarily drawing from the cartoon. But that is, now I've read all of the original Marvel Hama series. I have the trade paperbacks, but I also have the Sunbow show on DVD, and I'm as game for stuff drawn from it as I am for stuff drawn from the Hama comics. And he's going some big, weird, crazy places, which we'll talk a bit more about when we talk about the first Strike issue. But I'm basically glad he's getting to stick around and carry on writing G.I. Joe in some format so he can keep telling this story that he's building to. And if the price I have to pay for that is that Matt Tracker occasionally appears on panel, I guess that's all right.
Well, I'm definitely hoping that Sitterson can take that character and do something interesting with him, because as it stands right now, he is easily the most boring of all of the Mask characters, quite frankly. I
feel like he might be. Well, no, I was going to say he might be like a Poison Chalice, but I don't know. There might be something that.
I am a firm believer.
Matt Tracker was never interesting. That's the problem.
Well, I feel like they had some interest. I am of the firm belief that no idea is without merit.
Sure. I'm not saying you couldn't reinvent Matt Tracker to be interesting, but you'd basically have to. Well, what I was going to say, you'd basically have to throw out everything that already existed about him. But that's what IDW did in the first place. So it's a pity they couldn't have replaced it with something interesting. Yeah. But
they had interesting ideas. I think the inherent race change, the new ideas of him being like a Fast and Furious kind of style street racer and criminal kind of.
See, that's a solid idea for something like Musk.
It's
so particularly minded.
Yeah, they just didn't go anywhere with it, but
nothing came of it. Like I sort of kept abreast of Musk for a couple of issues until I drew a line,
I mean, me and Callum, we read every single issue, and every month it was just like, but yeah. So, and of course, one thing I did love about the announcement of Scarlet Strike Force is they revealed that the Intruder was going to appear, and as someone who is hardcore loves everything about the Adventure Team, I am all for the Intruder showing up. And the friggin' Army Ants, it's like...
Army Ants is a weird one.
I mean, I know, but it's like, for Citizens Joe, it's just weird enough to be amazing, and I'm, like, so excited, honestly.
Probably, but I'm like, it's like, it's nobody's fault, but I'm right on the edge, patience-wise. We've had subterranean monsters in G.I. Joe. Oh, it's okay. It's only Fatal Fluffies. We had Mask solicits that talked about subterranean. Oh, it's okay. It's only a Diorith. Now we've got another threat up from beneath the ground in the form of the Army Ants. Like, get to the friggin' fireworks factory already. Where are the Inhumanoids?
I totally... I mean, I get it. I mean... Like, that's the thing. We were all speculating for months that Inhumanoids was going to be the big thing. And then... It
really was. Now, we kind of set ourselves up for it, but it really was a case of nothing will be as satisfying or as entertaining. And while what happened was a perfectly entertaining comic, it wasn't the Inhumanoids. We set ourselves up for failure there.
I know.
I mean, as we'll see when we get to First Strike here in a few minutes, it's not like the threat from beneath has disappeared from the story just because they killed the Fatal Fluffies, or whatever they did to the Fatal Fluffies. We're still waiting for the actual final issue of the story.
Yeah.
But, that's still something Citizen's working towards, but get to the fireworks factor.
Yeah. After that, we have Gem and the Holograms Dimensions #2. It's the anthology series that's coming. Not much to really say there. And then we have I
have only read the first volume of Gem so far. I have the other volumes with Campbell's art, but I haven't got around to reading them yet.
Yeah, my only exposure has been the recent Infinite crossover. So, but I really do need to go back and reread that. But I'm also in the middle of my Joe reread and all that, so I got all kinds of stuff. I do want to briefly talk about the trade paperbacks that are solicited, because there's a Transformers The Wreckers Saga, which will be collecting Last Stand and Sins of the Wreckers, so that is going to be awesome, especially for those two stories, which are some of the best Transformers just stories in general, I think.
It'll be a nice collection, but it does sort of say to me, don't expect Wreckers 3 anytime soon.
Yeah, that is true. Let's see, they're releasing the Autocracy trilogy, which I feel like they either announced that this is like the third.
I think this might be the paperback release. I think they might have done a hardback release. I can't swear to it, but
because I feel like they announced an Autocracy trilogy.
Oh, definitely.
Like earlier, and so it's like I'm just weird to see it again. They're collecting both of the Drift series and Drift Spotlight in Drift Origins and Empires. So,
yeah, that certainly exists.
I never read the Drift series, so yeah. And then Mask Volume 2 is coming out, so
that also exists.
That is also a book that exists. So, enough of this screwing around. Let's get into the comics themselves. So, first off, let's talk Lost Light #9.
Lost Light #9.
Now, this issue was leaked, I believe, originally.
Well, leaked doesn't seem like the right word.
Well, okay, it was released early, accidentally through iTunes.
It came out when it was supposed to come out, and then they realized the print version was late.
But Yeah, but I was definitely someone who avoided the spoilers because I was like, especially because everyone.
Sadly, I did not. Not on purpose. Not on purpose, but yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I saw everybody talk about the big thing, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna avoid spoilers. And honestly, the big thing that happened at the end was the most interesting part of this issue.
It was, sadly, and I really wish I hadn't known about it, but such is life. I very rarely fall into that trap, but it just totally got me off guard, and I'm spoiled.
Which we will spoil basically right now. I'll just go ahead and spoil it for those of you who are listening. If you haven't read the issue, go pick it up. Scorponok is the Grand Architect. So let's just go ahead and talk about that. So Scorponok is the Grand Architect, and the Rhesus Cradle that was mentioned in the last issue is the Magnificence.
That's heavy.
I did not expect this to this is what, after how many years? 8?
Nearly 10 years for the Magnificence.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I mean, Scorponok was last seen in Maximum Dinobots, right?
Yeah. I mean, no. I feel like Scorponok, it wasn't a total mind blower because people had already pondered the possibility that the World Sweeper that Grimlock was found in could have had some connection to whatever happened after Garrus 9, since Grimlock was in it. Right. I'd seen people ponder that it might be Shockwave, for instance, but obviously it was never going to happen because Shockwave was an RID character at the time. And then having found out, really been able to put the pieces together off the back of the previous issue that the Grand Architect was connected to the World Sweepers, was connected to the Pods, was connected to Grimlock. It was a short trip to the revelation. I can't say I saw it coming, but then I also saw the page out of context, blindsided by it without having read the issue to put any subsequent clues together to maybe figure it out. But the Magnificence, I think, is the real surprise, because that's a I feel like that's a dangerous bear to poke, because the Magnificence was always rubbish. It was a massive cheat, and the fact that sort of continuity obsessed whiners keep going, where's the Magnificence? I'm not saying that was why it's come back or anything, but I never felt like it was something that needed to come back or to be explained, because it was a colossal cheat of a plot device of a thing, it's a dangerous bear to poke. We'll have to see what the plans are for it, and how they plan to actually implement it in the story in a way that doesn't just again make it a massive cheat. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is something that I was never in a million years expecting. I'm curious to know if this was I mean, especially because we've heard Roberts talk about having how he had his binders of his plan, and of course that has obviously changed over the course of the 5 years that this series has been going on. I am curious to know if this is something that was planned from the get-go, that was something that Roberts was interested in, or I mean, I'm always fascinated by sort of what was the decision process but yeah,
I could definitely believe Scorponok was in the planning from the off. Not too sure about the Magnificence, but Scorponok definitely feels. Yeah, I mean, specifically, certainly given how we know that the character had been batted around before by Roche and Roberts when they were doing Last Stand. Definitely, Scorponok was in there. He was in Roberts's brain after that. So, I could definitely see that having always been the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely in retrospect, when you put oh my gosh, Scorponok, yes, it makes so much sense that he's the Grand Architect, and I do look forward to seeing what he's planning with the Coffin Bot. And
Infinite.
Yeah, the Infinite. I like the name Coffin Bot. I think it's fun. It's a fun name. So, But outside of that, like, what did you think of this issue on the whole? With yeah.
Well, I like Nautica and Velocity as characters. I do like them, but I feel like this didn't quite reach the logical climax, which is that. I mean, obviously, I never expected Skids to come back to life, and anybody who was whining about the comic off the back of last issue's cliffhanger about him coming back to life needs a smack in the face. Shut up. Don't be ridiculous. He was never coming back to life through these means. But having his brain there and everything, it really seemed like the logical step there, especially in a story that was so obviously clearly connected to the meta plot, to the myth arc of the series, that there really should have been some transference of Skids' death. Didn't really work when it happened. It was one of now, generally speaking, I enjoyed Dying of the Light, but it was one of several moments in Dying of the Light that really needed much more room to breathe, so that the emotional impact could be properly felt. And I don't think that happened. And also, it means Skids dies with that unique knowledge of that encounter with the super spark on the other side of Tyrust's portal that nobody else knows about or has seen or anything. And I really felt like that's where this was going, was the transference of that knowledge from Skids' brain module to Nautica somehow, to further the myth arc in that regard. And I mean, I'm not saying that what we have happen at the end of this story is the full stop at the end of the Nautica and Skids story, but it does feel. And it's tragic, certainly, but again, I didn't get any kind of emotional punch from it, from her losing her emotional connection to her memories of Skids. It was a bit procedural for me, honestly. There was no real emotional heft to it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I was like, from the get go, I did not like this whole like plot of, oh, gotta, give up your friendship, and like, and as soon as like that happened and that argument with Velocity happened, I kind of could see where this was going. I was like, yeah, okay, it's gonna mess up. She's gonna lose her memories as Skids or something, and yeah, I gotta. I'm with you. Just like, it really didn't ring.
There are concepts again, like on a conceptual level, there are some ideas at work here that I'm super into. Broad stroke sort of ideas, like the idea of the commodification of emotion and the ability to sell that, or the idea of having your emotional connection removed for your memories, so it's merely facts that exist in your brain. I like concepts like that. I don't exactly know how you would. I don't know how you would describe concepts like that, but in intangible ideas like that, I'm very into the idea of it. And I also really liked and really wished it could have. I mean, I would have gotten really into like a big multi-page conversation about the idea that Nautica blamed Velocity for Skids' death, and I was like, yeah, could we mine that? Could we really? Could we dig into the emotions involved here? But it just doesn't. It seems like it seems like it's all quite surface level, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Nothing. None of it really hit home for me emotionally, and Lug and Anode stuff really just like I haven't had the strong negative reaction to them that a lot of people had. I actually quite like Lug. I'm not super into Anode, but I like Lug a lot for some reason. I think it's the put upon role she has. I like Lug, but like I was into what they were doing last issue, but then this issue is kind of like, yeah, well, we gotta tie up those threads from last issue. We gotta fill those pages. It's like they had that bit where they read the Infinites metal, or Wipeout did, but that was like kind of like their only real contribution to, and it wasn't even a contribution to the plot of the issue. It was just a moment to provide the audience with some information that they'll need to properly understand what we learn later in the comic, rather than anything that actually benefits Anode and Lug as characters in a story. Yeah, no, I get
it
wasn't a bad issue.
Yeah, I mean,
it
to me,
wasn't
it just
even the worst issue of Lost Light so far.
Oh, certainly not. No.
But it just didn't. There was no for an issue that was so centered around the theme of emotions. It just didn't hit me with any. I might have a different opinion, or my opinion might have been colored more if I had been able to experience the last page surprise as a surprise. Yeah. You know how that just works. You know, it would have been my bigger takeaway, and it might have, a rising tide lifting all boats. It might have just I might have added a star to whatever my imaginary rating for the issue is because of that. But I had it spoiled, so I didn't get that big hoo-ha punch at the end of the comic, and it makes the flaws in the rest of it more apparent to me.
I mean, it's like I said, I did not get spoiled on this, and I felt the same as you. I was like, they're really like I could see what it was trying to do, but it really didn't get me, like other issues had. I will say though, I do wonder if the fact that they left behind
Skids' brain, it seems significant to point it out. It doesn't seem like they're just pointing it out so they can reveal that Velocity, that Nautica has lost her emotional connection to Skids. It feels like flagging that up matters. What happens is tragic, but I don't feel like we've got the full stop at the end of the story. I don't think this is the end of Nautica's connection to Skids and the secrets that lie buried within Skids' brain. But it also doesn't. But I'm coming to that conclusion based more on the fact that there is no catharsis or sense of conclusion to the issue, rather than the fact that the comic itself is signposting any further exploration of the storyline, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I don't feel like the comic is holding up a sign saying this story isn't over. I think I'm coming to that conclusion because emotionally I'm unsatisfied with where it's been left, and I can't believe that could be where it would stop.
Yeah. I definitely get that. I mean, it's one of those things where at this point I'm really I'm still looking forward to the next issue, and I'm looking forward to the Mutineers arc.
Yes, I am too.
But at this point,
I feel like this could be the Mutineers could be the shot in the arm this book needs.
Yeah, but at this point, it's just part of the series. It's just not been. I don't know. It's just like when it comes to like my ranking of the books, it certainly would not be like up at the top.
Not where it used to occupy. Yeah. I feel like it's been struggling to get itself back on track after the end of season 2.
Yeah,
they need it, whatever divisive opinions abound, but they needed to get rid of Megatron. Megatron needed removed from the book. He was dominating it, and I in fact several months in advance predicted that is how the story would end. Not exactly the way it would, but I did not think he and Terminus were coming back from the Functionist universe. I think that they will return eventually, sooner or later, but yeah. So in a sense, like Dissolution was kind of like a transitional arc to get us from that one place to where the book is now. But despite the fact that these two issues are some of the most myth arc centric stuff since Dying of the Light, Remain in Light, maybe.
Yeah.
It still feels like the book. It's caught in this in between place. I don't know where it's going, and maybe this return to the ship itself and to the Mutineers will give it that sense of purpose that it needs again. But I feel like it's caught in a between place right now.
Yeah. So with that, let's move on to First Strike number 3.
First Strike.
Yes. So Chris. We've been loving this crossover so far. What are your thoughts on the crossover?
again, when it started, real teeth sucker. I don't know why, because I feel like Revolution had been a proof of concept that the story could work. And even off the back of the first issue, I was like, it's all right. But I tell you, after issues 2 and 3, this is tremendous fun. It feels this is hitting some notes that Revolution didn't. That it doesn't feel overstuffed, kind of like Revolution did.
Yeah,
there's no extraneous Micronauts and ROM hanging about who really don't have a role in the story. The only people in this story are people who need to be in this story, and also Mask is here for some reason, but it's okay. You can ignore them.
That's definitely the thing that we have been observing in the last 2 issues was this is much more focused, consolidated. It doesn't feel like they're trying to stuff everything in, and that's one of the things that's really helping this. It's very much feels like really character focused on really on Scarlet, and I think that's one of the things that's really is helping it compared to Revolution.
Yeah, this is the true humanity reacts to Optimus's annexation of Earth story. That's kind of how Revolution was framed at first, but then it turned into something else entirely. Yeah. So it never reached a real conclusion in that regard, You had that weird bit tacked on the end where Optimus was like, oh, no, I know we have to protect this world together. And I'm like, well, that's great, but it doesn't really have much to do with what, It's about halfway through, it turned from being humanity having a legitimate grievance into Miles Mayhem, Baron Karza, and the Dire Wraiths trying to conquer the world. And I'm not saying that such a big, silly, cartoonish plot was a bad idea for a crossover, the entire ethos of which was all your favorite cartoons and toys from when you were a kid in the 80s get smashed together. But it didn't flow out of where it began. Whereas First Strike is the true humanity strikes back against the Transformers for their decision. But also it mitigates the potential exhaustion the audience has with humanity versus Transformers by having the people doing it being literal supervillains. Not just baddies, but real supervillains, cyborgs and people with laser firing hats and giant robots and ninjas and evil scientists and stuff. It's tremendous fun.
Yeah, and I think this issue more than anything shows that one of the biggest strengths is just the villains. And just their interactions. We've seen some of this briefly, in Revolutionaries with guys like Iron Blood and Krieger and Iron Claw and all that. But getting to see Miles Mayhem and Storm Shadow, like that scene where Storm Shadow just and Shaz-Rayla. And Shaz-Rayla, oh my god, great character in the Micronauts series, and she continues to just be phenomenal. I want her to stick around, honestly.
As someone who hasn't read Micronauts and doesn't know anything about the character beyond that one appearance in the Till All Are One Revolution one shot, I've really been enjoying her role in this. I love that there's a bit in this issue where everyone's like, oh, you're inevitably going to betray us, you filthy alien. And he's like, if I wanted to, I could just do this. And he just turns on a gun on the wall, and it's like, I think I've made my point, bitches.
Honestly, it's one of those things. I almost feel like Margaret Scott has done more for that character than even her appearances in the Micronauts. Just she exudes this sort of. I'm trying to think of a comparison. She's almost like the Lady Macbeth to Kars's Macbeth.
Yeah, I can see that. I imagine that's probably
in a lot of
I would
ways.
say in the one sentence description of the character, wherever they have that in their Bible, that's. I imagine that was the starting point for the character, definitely.
Yeah, but to see her outside of that context and having to work with all these, these humans that she, despite being initially smaller than them, she just has such contempt for them. But she,
what's that one? That one great line Storm Shadow has in issue 2 was something like, you're very bossy for someone so easily crushed. And you could leave the line there, but then Shazarella comes back and says, that should tell you something. And I'm like, oh, I like this. And it's funny, you specifically mentioned Scott there, but this is co-written with her and what's the other fellow's name? Rodriguez, is it? David Rodriguez? I don't know David Rodriguez. I don't know any of his other work. So it's hard to know exactly who's contributing what in that regard, but you do get the real sense that Shazrael is a Scott thing.
Yeah. Well, I really only say Scott because of Shazrael's prior appearance in the Till All Are One Revolution tie-in. Outside of that, her appearances have just been written by Cullen Bunn and Jimmy Johnston of Micronauts. But that's the thing. And Shazraela, and all the other villains like Krieger and Mayhem, and because that's the thing, I love Miles Mayhem.
Mask is dog shit, but Miles Mayhem is tremendous.
I mean, even in
written by Joan Barber, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and now Margaret Scott and David Rodriguez.
Yes.
But that's the thing, I from the moment we actually saw him in the Revolution Prelude, I instantly. There was just something about this character that just instantly drew me, and I even like the old Miles Mayhem in a in a hipstery kind of ironic kind of.
Miles Mayhem is
he's such a goofy villain.
It's a very strong character design, and
I think that's really one of the things about it.
Among most of the Mask characters, he's probably got one of the best character designs. There's something about his character design more than. I'm running through Mask character designs in my head, and nobody's coming to mind as somebody that maybe Sly Rags, but it really gives you a clue of what he's about. Miles Mayhem. All those medals and that blue military suit and everything, and then then you make the terrible mistake of going back and watching the Mask cartoon and discovering that he's actually not at all like what that image presents at all, and the voice acting is terrible and everything about Mask is rubbish. But this portrayal of Miles Mayhem that IDW has been offering up outside of the Mask comic itself really feels like it's lived up to the promise of his character design, to the Miles Mayhem that's lived in my head since I was a child.
Oh yeah, definitely. And not only that, but also his appearances in Revolutionaries and all that. Of informing this character of he's a despicable bastard, but there was at some point that he might have actually been a good guy.
There's an air of he projects a kind of an air of class. When you're strutting around in a suit with your medals across and your crew cut grey hair and your neatly trimmed moustache, there's an air of refinement, of kind of austerity, kind of like old money thing about Miles Mayhem, and they succeed in living up to that, I think, with the way they've depicted him in this. Even with these little bits where he makes these backhanded remarks about Scarlet because she's just one woman, just real old world kind of douchey, old school, old guy military sexism. It rings true with the image Miles's character design puts across. Yeah, Miles is great. I like Miles a lot.
Yeah, and also he can, and then on the flip side of that he's also kind of a dork because he comes out driving the Outlaw and and I know this is last issue, but still it's drives the Outlaw with a big old snake painted on the side of it. It's
branding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. If I will say one thing about this issue that that wasn't great is that we didn't get to see a whole lot more of what's been happening on Cybertron, and we're now halfway through.
Yeah, it kind of feels like there's just a lot of running and gunning is going on up there. But that is what it is. It's just it is just a big chaotic distraction while the villains are under there. But it does feel a little odd, like Optimus Prime has decided to go and take a powder and talk things out with Starscream and Alita in a tower instead of being on the ground shooting things. That's all. Like Starscream and Alita not being on the ground. That's cool. And that's Till R1 has made clear that is the role those characters occupy. But Optimus Prime, even as recently as in his own title, when something happens, he's there on the ground. And it is a little weird. I understand that the comic is not about Optimus Prime. Right, so it just needs to pull him back to give their characters room. And to have really cool stuff like Soundwave coming up and wham!
Oh my god, that was such a great page.
Soundwave is so great in this as well.
Yes. And he's my favorite. So, I'm automatically like Soundwave's here. I love it. But then it's like he's written so well. And we get to I also have really been enjoying getting to see more of the Copter twins. I mean,
absolutely.
Like that's the thing. Like Victorion is one of the that's the thing. We've gotten plenty of character development for Pyra. We got a little bit of like the car lesbians in the
we got enough that I feel like I know who they are now.
Yeah, but now we're getting some more of Skyburst and Stormclash, and I feel like this is really the first time
definitely.
Actually, yeah.
Well, I think probably their bios in Earth Wars have laid out some character for them, but definitely comic wise, this is the first time that their characters are written with such big broad strokes, such broad simple character. This is not a criticism, you understand I'm saying, but it's like every word out of their mouths is a statement about who they are and what their personality is versus the more reserved careful plotting of what we saw with Jumpstream and Dustop. I remembered the names of the in the annual. That was a softer story, whereas this is very much, these guys are here, they're sassy, they're techie, and they're lots of fun. They and Soundwave are in tremendous danger of running away with this crossover in a way I did not expect.
Yeah.
And if nothing else comes of it, we will have this.
Yes, definitely.
Barber's Soundwave, the things John Barber has done with Soundwave have been pretty much the best things ever done with Soundwave.
Oh my god, yes.
Shy of the original Furman's use of his original blackmailer and style personality way back in the Marvel days, whenever nothing else was doing that, and Furman was the one to actually latch onto the bio to tell stories of Soundwave manipulating and moving like that. But since then, we really do just get loyal cartoon Soundwave and everything. And the way Barber has rolled those together and found a new slant to put on Soundwave's loyalty, being loyalty to an ideal rather than an individual, and him himself coming to understand that, it's made it easily the most interesting Soundwave has been since year one, since the Marvel years, at least Furman's Marvel years. And this again is adding. He's really settling into this role. I'm not quite there yet with where when Soundwave makes a joke that I'm like, haha, yes. I'm like, whoa, Soundwave made a joke. That's still weird to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get.
He's tremendously entertaining in this, but as great as everything Barber has done with him has been, whenever he's flip about anything, I still always do a small double take.
Yeah.
But whenever he comes out and does something badass, like takes down the entire battlefield with like a targeted sonic scream, yeah, that's cool.
Although I do have to say, I do love the quip about I prefer to think of everyone else as profoundly deaf.
That is a great line too.
Yeah. Let's see.
He's trying. God love him. He's trying to be better, and he's doing it too.
Yes. Yeah.
I encourage Soundwave. I'm here for Soundwave. I support Soundwave in the things he is attempting to do.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else of note, because like we said, this is a lot of running and gunning, but
this issue is it's the mid part of the crossover, so it's the bit where we have to transition from our opening salvo into where we're going to need everybody to be in the second half. So it is just a bit of the villains carry on moving further into their plan. The heroes get into the position they need to be in and find themselves at the point of conflict that will then flip things around for the second half of the story. So it's not a particularly deep or involved issue of the comic, but it compensates for being straightforward by having a lot of fun moments and cool moments like that.
Yeah. Oh,
and also Dr. Mindbender is there.
Yes, and I was just about to say, you and me ended up kind of calling this twist because it was like one of those things where because that whole mysterious other figure was going around, and it was like, but that's Colton, but Colton's Baron Ironblood. What? And then I was like, it's somebody else, and they were like, maybe it's Dr. Mindbender, and then it's like, it's Dr. Mindbender.
Last issue, so
yeah. So that's the thing, he had to be somewhere around here. And
I like the idea that he's wearing his monocle under the helmet.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. This actually, the fact that he is here, does make his appearances in Mask so much more worthwhile than they initially appeared. Because when they initially Dr. Mindbender was in Mask, it was okay, but why?
Yeah,
it just seems so random. It's now
a question you could ask about a lot of stuff that happens in Mask, but
but now it's oh, this is why. So yeah.
Well, no, I mean, this is probably not why. It's just a fortunate side effect.
Well, I mean,
I presume one of these Origins of Evil backups will explain exactly what happened there.
Yeah, hopefully. So yeah, I do want to briefly touch on the Origins of Evil backup. It's one of those things where we mostly have already talked about how great Miles is. But I do want to say this. I do like that this... it's one of those things where we still don't know the full story about Colton. I assume that this will be explained in Revolutionaries number 8, which comes out next week.
Yeah.
Or this week, actually, depending on... Yeah. Yeah, so this week. But, yeah, I do like that this does hint towards, sort of the... I like just sort of the brief hints of Joe's the last time I saw you, you tried to kill me. Oh, you're still upset about Dolphins Bay and all that. I
don't think we'll get that in.
I don't think we'll get that. But
that's something that happened years ago.
Yeah, but I like that they do sort of bring up that.
Well, we need to find out what happened, why they fell away from one another.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing, especially because and that's one thing I do like about this whole shared universe is, and part of something that Revolutionaries has been exploiting is this sort of, that there is this sort of secret history that we don't know about. It's the kind of stuff I am definitely that as a creator I really like these little brief bits and bobs of history, even if we don't see the full thing. I mean,
that's their strength because. A lot of them is I'm enjoying them well enough, but some more than others. Where it's this one is Colton and Mayhem have a past. There's some stuff to work with there. Whereas last issue with Destro, it was just and this is why Destro is here. There was nothing to say about that issue. It was just moving a piece to a place. I get the impression that the Shazraella one, which well, you got to presume there'll be a Shazraella one. That'll probably be much the same as and this is why Shazraella is here. It'll probably just be that just moving that piece into place. But ones like this are a bit more fun wherever we can dig into the history involved.
Yeah. I will say, though, one thing I did not like about this backup story was the art. In one regard, and that was with Blitzwing. I did not... Yeah,
I don't feel like it's working.
It looked too human to me. Well,
I don't tend to mind, Transformers drawn that way, because I'm from the older guard that grew up with your Andrew Wildmans and that, But the eyeball is weird.
Yeah, it was the eyes that were really that was definitely throwing me off. Like it wasn't so much. It was really just the eyeballs looked too human, and really it should have looked more. Like I'm definitely someone who prefers like the more, just big lights, for eyes. So yeah.
Well, for me personally, although I've never, I'll never kick up a fuss about it. I have always preferred it whenever artists or general depictions have been willing to just present like eye visors as being the eyes. I don't get with this thing that the visor just covers the normal eyes underneath. Where's the fun in that?
Right. Yeah.
Why can't they have a visor strip that is their eyes instead of just them being sunglasses? But anyway, that's a very oddly specific complaint that I've lived with for many, many years that I just happen to have brought up right now. Not something I would hold against this comic.
Blitzwing was also one of those characters that kind of went back and forth between does he have visors or does he not have visors? So it's like then there was like, oh well, he has a visor that comes down and all that. So yeah,
no, that was Astrotrain.
Oh wait, was that? Oh shoot, you're right. I was thinking.
Yeah, and they justified that by saying he had bad eyes, so he had the visor to compensate for that.
Okay. Oh well. Yeah. So. Yeah. So that's pretty much everything for for First Strike number 3. It was really
a middle
good.
chapter, but continuing the entertaining nature of the story. Far more entertaining than I really expected it to be going in, honestly. Like, I wasn't set against it, but I wasn't expecting a lot out of it, but it's really mined every possible strength out of what it's doing. I'm really impressed by it.
Yeah.
Now I just have to see if it sticks the landing.
Yes. But let's keep our First Strike talk going by talking about G.I. Joe First Strike. Now, one thing before we get into this is this will spoil something that happens in G.I. Joe number 9. So
several things.
Yeah, well, several things, but one big thing. But yeah, so if
I feel like it's at least two big things.
Well, I mean, I don't consider one of these things a spoiler because of course. But anyways, my point is for our listeners is if you don't want to, if you want to, if you haven't read this book and want to go into G.I. Joe number 9 blind, stop and come back to this episode later. With that being said, so first off, the Baroness is the new Cobra Commander.
Cool.
I like this. Like, to me, this seems like such an obvious idea that with my limited G.I. Joe knowledge, hasn't really happened before, or hasn't happened in...
Closest thing I could think you could say would be when she was the Serpentress in Transformers G.I. Joe, Tom Scioli's.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is like full on with the hood and everything. She is the new Cobra Commander. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And of course, now she's in charge of Venom, apparently, for reasons that I don't...
I was like, for reasons that are unclear, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, hopefully there will be some exploration of that, I hope.
It's like they're saying, like, no, because Mayhem is on Cybertron, she's taken control of Venom. And it's like, well, are you saying you've just... I mean, maybe the idea is simply that she's just knowing that they are without a leader, she's just invited them in.
Maybe.
It could be as simple as that. And, I don't feel like that actually needs any expounding on. But that it's a little unclear if that is if that's all it is. I don't need any further explanation. But could do with clearly stating that is what it is.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's just one of those things where Venom, it's not like that old Matt Tracker. Joe
they're not actually connected to Cobra or anything.
Yeah, so Vanessa, Sly, and Bruno are sort of brought into Venom, and I look forward to seeing. Like I was saying, when this plot was first announced, like I was all down for this because I like the Joes that that we have in the Joe book, and I think Venom are a hell of a lot more interesting characters than the masked characters. So the promise of seeing and also just slapping the Cobra logo on their costumes really worked for me. Well,
it's a simple and steadfast rule of most of these 1980s properties. Transformers actually is kind of the exception because it was as well made as it was. But in 80s kid-vid properties like this, the baddies are much more interesting. Cobra.
Cobra is
the show. Like Cobra is G.I. Joe. If you didn't have Cobra in G.I. Joe, it wouldn't be worth looking at it.
Oh no. Just getting to see more of them, I am down for.
They're an incredibly natural fit. It's why we kind of don't need to dwell on it because
and of course it leads to something that this had happened in that this was part of the pages that had been part of that Scarlet Strike Force announcement, but I had completely forgotten that by the time that I actually read this. So to me that last page was what?
The last page of the was that?
That was the King Cobra.
Yeah,
thing?
was that given away somewhere or?
Yeah, it was given away in the Scarlet Strike Force, the first announcement, like when they first announced that they were changing the title and all that.
Oh, what did it say? Because I didn't see that.
Oh, it just they just included some of the pages from.
Of this. Oh.
Yeah, the last 3 pages.
I didn't see that, but I will still admit that as soon as Scrap Iron said I've added something extra, I was like, they're going to transform. That's what's going to happen. They're going to transform. They're going to turn into a robot. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I sped ahead to the conclusion. Didn't expect them to combine into a robot snake, but I was like, they're going to transform. That's what's going to do. Robots coming in.
Yeah, and then of course, but I mean that's the thing. It's I think this is and I wish that every issue of G.I. Joe had this just sort of breakneck pacing.
This energy, exactly.
Yes,
oh my God! I enjoy Citizen's G.I. Joe, largely because of how fun and unself-conscious it is.
The fact that it will do a giant robot snake
sometimes.
Yeah.
The really funny thing is that it seems like issue 9 of G.I. Joe is going to be the most eventful out of this entire arc that's been going on for the last 5 months, based on everything that we see is going to have to happen in it based on this issue. But there's a breakneck, just balls to the wall, one moment of wackiness after the other. It's where is this energy in the main Joe book? More, please.
Yeah, it really this is the example of what Citizens Joe should be, and what it has the potential to be, and what it can be, and what it should be.
I mean, and frankly, if the Venom guys want to hang around among the ranks of Cobra in Scarlet Strike Force, I think this issue proves why it'll be a natural fit that won't feel like a Joe book with bits of another property bolted on the side.
Yeah, definitely. And I really liked seeing Shipwreck in charge. Yeah. And him just being I have no idea what I'm doing. I will just try everything.
It doesn't seem to fit at all with Shipwreck as he has been depicted in IDW up to now. But I'm
definitely, this is, I'm used to I haven't read a ton of the old IDW Joe stuff, so it's so it doesn't bother me that much. And B, it's
no, that's it bothers me, but it's an observation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's just it gets us this amazing issue, so I can deal. But yeah, it's just seeing Shipwreck and all that, and especially that moment where it's you didn't bring any vehicles that go in water. I know. Just brilliant exchange. Oh yeah, and it turns out that Rock and Roll has survived his whole thing. Which, I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to be dead or anything, but still, there's let's maintain the illusion. Jeez.
Yeah, it's one of those things where honestly, I feel Rock is sort of Citizen's favorite character. Like,
I don't know about favorite, but he's certainly at the heart of the overplot based on what we're seeing here.
And when we get some teases towards like there's like mentions of Globulus, who in the IDW, who I do know in the IDW books is like a snake god thing, or like
best way to describe it.
Yeah, it's like some sort of snake god that Serpentor worships and all that.
Well, I was never truly clear, based on reading the old Cobra stuff, I was never clear if Serpentor actually believed any of it. Or because the idea with Serpentor in IDW continuity is that he runs Cobra's religious arm, which is the Coil, which is just a cult. It's just Cobra does Scientology. Globulus Globulus is essentially in IDW. Globulus is Zimu. That's what he is. But I never. So I never knew if it was supposed to be taken as anything that the people in charge of the Coil actually believed in or not, because Serpentor is a guy in this. Peter Manassian is Serpentor's real name, if I recall correctly. He's not, the genetically engineered spawn of Sergeant Slaughter and Julius Caesar in this one.
What? Lame.
I know, lame. I mean, they do play with it, and it's the idea that.
I've seen those painting pages.
Yeah,
where they sort of say where they have Attila the Hun and Napoleon, and it's all
these were all agents and servants of the serpent, and Globulus threw down the ages, and today has brought us Serpentor, the perfect distillation of all the previous. It's very early IDW G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
it's like, take this seriously. That's take this ridiculousness seriously. And I'm like, no, it looks like we got a big old Sarlacc tentacle monster coming in this, and that's more what I'm here for.
Yeah, and of course, this is a world that has had literal Cthulhu showed up and fought Optimus Prime and back in the 1800s. So
that did happen.
Yeah, that happened.
That happened to the Joes too.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It's happened.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the full plot is going to be with there, and that's definitely it definitely seems to be the arc, the full.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like it's. I mean, given these antediluvian artifacts that Cobra is running around getting in this issue, the actual MacGuffin, as it were, of this story, these attempts to steal these artifacts, a bowl and a dagger, we see at least. I mean, that is really screaming. Whoop! Somebody's going to do some kind of arcane ceremony sometime soon. This whatever it is, it feels like it's connected to all of that.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where this goes, but yeah, this is just has just been great. It's full of energy. It's just it's really what I really want out of the Aubrey Sitterson Joe run, and so
and it's even with Skywarp on the team, and it's still not the craziest thing that's happening. Gung Ho's stars and stripes gauntlets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's maximum ridiculousness.
I know.
Sure, they're just strength in handling gauntlets. Yeah, that's the level. But who knows if it's happening in universe? But artistically, one is trailing a bunch of red stripes and the other's trailing a bunch of stars. That's amazing.
And I really love the art on this.
There's a real energy to it.
I enjoyed Mila Giannis's art, from the main series.
I'm a big fan of his too, yeah.
But yeah, this was the energy to it was just phenomenal, and
Ilias Kyriazis.
Yeah. And one other thing that I wanted to talk about, that this comes it's sort of been dropped a few hints earlier on in the run, I feel, but this issue brings it and has dropped all the subtext. I love that Sitterson is writing Gung Ho as gay.
I wouldn't say they've dropped the subtext, because if they had,
dropped
the subtext, he would just say he was gay. But I don't know how.
I mean, but I feel like it's
the things he's saying as anything other than that. Yeah. No, I was on this train from early on. I felt like they were dropping the hints whenever he was talking about how Lady J remarked how she wasn't gung ho's type or something. I was like, are they? Is he implying what I think he's implying? And it turns out they are.
I mean, it's definitely the least subtle, I think, in this issue, though. Like,
oh God, yes. No, I mean it's big, broad. To be honest, if it wasn't being done with such. With what I imagine to be good intentions, it would actually be in danger of being almost offensively stereotypical.
But I mean, honestly, I out of all the
also, it's gonna piss off G.I. Joe fans, so I'm super for it.
I mean, yeah, it's like I do love that, and it's like I get why gung ho. Although this does now it makes so much sense why they had gung ho on that, like specifically on that one that they did for Pride Month. It's like
well, I was still unclear if that cover was specifically commissioned for that, or if it just so happened that. Yeah.
It's hard to know, but I feel like this is probably one of those things, that, like, Citizen was like, hey, I'm going to rate Gung Ho as gay, and then, we should do something for Pride Month, that kind of thing. Let's do a Gung Ho cover, something like that. I don't know how all that worked, but I'm just saying, if it was intentional, if not...
Conversely, I do wish Grand Slam would just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I'll say that.
It's like okay, yeah, I'm sorry you're in a wheelchair, guy. You got dealt a bad hand. It sucks, man. But you didn't put your gum down either, okay?
Yeah.
You pushed Rock into that situation. It was him or you, and you're lucky you're alive, frankly.
Yeah.
Off the back of what happened in that story. So, maybe drop the fucking attitude a little bit, guy.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, it just feels like that's all Grand Slam. That's almost.
That's all he's got going on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just. I'm mad at Rock because I'm in a wheelchair. It's like
I make weapons and I'm mad that I'm in a wheelchair. It's like okay, but
But yeah, I mean, especially because just.
Also, I mean, he actually is like, who am I rolling with? And I'm like, unless you've equipped that thing to fly or has guns in it, I don't know why you would even expect that.
I mean, it could probably move pretty quickly, admittedly.
Oh, yeah. I imagine, to be fair, it probably will be flying and have guns in it very shortly. Yeah. but still, it's like, you're not making yourself... I don't know. Maybe people closer to the character would have a different opinion, but it's like, a character doesn't have to be, I was going to say he's not making himself very likable, but, not everybody has to be likable to be a good character, but I don't feel like, a character doesn't have to be likable to be a good character, but I don't feel like he's a good character either.
Yeah. I mean, just because he hasn't really done much of anything else,
And maybe his beef is the fact he's not being given a chance to do much of anything else. But it feels like this is an issue. The character himself, he has an issue that he is really going to need to confront sooner rather than later, because it just feels like we kind of have a page each issue where he's mad about it and then nothing happens and we move on and it's still going on next issue.
Yeah. But I think that will just... is there anything else to...
Well, this also confirms Spitfire joined the Joes as well, which we all saw coming again. But it's like, how is all this going to happen in the span of one issue of Joe? That's something I'm not sure about as well. Yeah, it does seem like... I'm just surprised that Spitfire didn't show up or get more to do a little sooner, quite frankly. But I mean, it's one of those things we've talked about before. The pacing on Joe. Well, he was obviously, it's like his joining is a subplot in the second volume, the second trade paperback of G.I. Joe. So he'll appear in it and then he'll join at the end of it. But it is. and I'm sure it'll all flow out quite normally when the issue actually comes out. But when we jump over that issue and see, it does feel like it's like if we'd skipped any other issue of the current arc of G.I. Joe, there wouldn't have been any kind of. It would be basically you couldn't tell we'd skipped it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that just about brings us to the end. So,
but yeah, that's the first Strike one shot, isn't it?
Yeah, which is another thing about the fact that First Strike is now halfway over, and we've only gotten one of the tie-ins.
Well, I think they needed to get most with Joe. At least, certainly, it was they needed to get Joe off Earth before this story could happen. Scarlet's team off Earth, so that's where this one falls. It kind of seems like they need to get that opening volley of First Strike itself out of the way, so the other bits of the story then can happen after that.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with First Strike Optimus Prime, especially because Optimus, I think, is said to be involved in the story. Yeah,
it feels like not and then, given where we left
back.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course he'll come back so that really the Revolutionaries and RC can kind of do that, which and Centurion, and I'm so excited because I love Centurion so much.
I'm interested in him, but he pulled a dick move in the last issue of Revolutionaries, so I'm like, I don't know where the character stands.
I was sad about my boy, but it's but at the same time, it's also his backstory is so tragic, and also he's the bumblebee that turns into turned into the train, and I'm honestly such a sucker for train formers in general.
Fair enough. I'm not judging him. I'm not blaming him for not suddenly unlearning everything that Krieger has spent the last 50 years teaching him. Yeah. But
also that cowcatcher faceplate just works wonders.
Yeah, great touch.
Honestly, Bombshell was always my favorite Insecticon precisely for that reason.
Well, they also probably just need to do something to differentiate him from Bumblebee visually a bit.
True. Yeah. But yeah, so so we'll we have First Strike, the First Strike Optimus, and then the Revolutionaries will be a part of that, and then of course, granted, ROM and Micronauts is taking place wholly on Earth, so.
That's a weird one because it's I don't even know why you guys have tie-in one-shots, to be honest with you.
Because boost sales, hopefully, I guess.
I mean, the Soul Star Order are hovering over First Strike, so maybe that's the reason for Rob's involvement. And I guess Shazraella has her thing she's part of the main story, so I don't see how that could really lead to Micronaut involvement, though. So, if the main story of First Strike can remain with the sort of cast it has going on now, and they don't wind up lumping on additional, tie-in characters onto, I think First Strike is on a path to a very successful story. Yeah. But if they flub it and start jamming extra stuff on it, could all go wrong.
Yeah, well, definitely based on previews, for Micronauts and ROM, I feel like it's really more there for. For Fallout, to deal with Fallout from their own book, especially in the case of Micronauts, to deal with Fallout from Wrath of Karza, and to sort of facilitate the ROM versus Micronauts.
I suppose that they are they're doing a tie-in thing the same way Joe and Mask and Revolutionaries and Optimus are, aren't they?
Yeah. So
it's probably really what it is, isn't it? It's probably more about setup for that than it is anything else. Just like this is really probably mostly set up for Scarlet Strike Force.
Yeah. So I think that will just about do it for everything for us for this week. So since Callum's
what's coming up next week?
I will tell you, Chris. Next week we have
First Strike 4.
Yes, First Strike number 4, Gem Infinite number 3, the fifth part of the Gem Infinite crossover, Micronauts First Strike, Revolutionaries number 8, ROM number 13, and Shining Armor number 3.
It's a busy week next week.
Yes. Luckily, after that, nothing's coming out next week. So
you see, this is why I'm not super sad about the new solicits only having 5 books, because I had to wiki 10 issues last month.
I know.
And that's including multiple issues of First Strike and Oh Yeah and handbooks. 5 issues a month will be a welcome relief for a little while, for as long as it lasts.
Yeah, I do not blame you one bit. But yeah, so it's definitely going to be a busy week, but I think it's going to be a good week because we got another part of First Strike, ROM number 13, Revolutionaries number 8.
Revolutionaries.
I'm kind of sad though that this is going to be the end of the book because I've just been loving Revolutionaries to death.
Revolutionaries has been a real success. If there's anything that's proven the real strengths of the whole Hasbro Universe thing, I think it's been the gleeful abandon with which Revolutionaries has set about its story.
Yes. So anyways, next week we should be back with a regular episode. I will say, because Callum wasn't here, we might do a bonus episode to sort of go back and catch up on, and mainly to discuss Wrath of Karza, because that is, because we also want to, we want to talk about the end of, quote unquote, the end of the Micronauts series. Thank you so much for joining me for this, Chris. It was a great episode. So before you go, please plug your stuff. Where can people find more of you on the internet?
Well, I think you said it all at the very start. I'm always on the wiki. It's mostly IDW stuff these days, just because I've got working on other things means I'm not wikiing as much as I'd like to. Still need to get back to doing those GoBots episodes. On the Allspark, at Chris McFeely on Twitter and on Tumblr. And still working on my new YouTube series, Transformers: The Basics, designed for new Transformers fans, accessible to all. Next week's episode is going to be about the Dinobots, so check that out, and perhaps consider supporting it on Patreon as well.
Yes, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at Daniel Adkins PRD. I'm on the Allspark as Daniel Adkins. That's really my main Transformers kind of hub. I help to edit TF Wiki and help run the IDW Hasbro Wiki, and I'm pretty much on all the social medias, Tumblr, YouTube, although I don't really do YouTube anymore. And as always, you can find more episodes of Action and Adventure on our Libsyn page, on iTunes, on Google Play, and of course, as always, hosted by our great team over at theallspark.com. They are a tremendous site, and we thank them every day for hosting us. And of course, you can continue to follow the podcast on social media. Follow us on Twitter at Hasbro U Podcast, on Tumblr at hasbrouniversepodcast.tumblr.com. And that's actually it. We don't have any other social media. We should probably get on like a Facebook page or something, but I hardly ever use Facebook, so...
Yeah, Facebook's overrated.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
See you guys. Thanks for having me on.
He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra and Destro, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up. He'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe.